Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thursday Night Saws. We are getting kicked off here tonight and got a lot going on. I hope to have a couple folks checking in here, and we're going to see if they are out and about and ready to check in. I saw a couple on here. I'm Tim Hard, the host, and we are streaming on YouTube, on Instagram, and also on Facebook. Looks like everything is on tonight, so it's hopefully going pretty good out there. Please, someone let me know if there's no sound or anything like that. Hopefully, it's all coming through. But we're gonna see about who is out there. I think there was a couple that waiting to get in. All right, so we got David Breeden, Chris Childs. All right. So you guys are in? I don't see Chris yet. Let's see. There he is. All right.
Here I
So
am.
we got that. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Are you guys muted? Asked to unmute, it says.
Yeah. Sorry. Happy New Year.
All right, I'm not picking anybody up. Let's see here. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, David.
David, Chris? Can you hear?
I can hear you, Chris. Tim's the only one that can't hear.
I'm getting no sound. Chris, do you have sound?
Yeah.
All right. It's not coming through. All right. Maybe I've got you guys now.
You got us?
I think so.
Good
David,
deal.
you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All
Happy New
right,
Year.
very good. Very good. Happy New Year. Yeah, looking forward to tonight. We've got several things that we're going to be discussing. And I just wanted to kind of start off here. I've got hopefully everything goes a little bit smoother tonight. Our first thing I want to talk about is auto tune saws, and I know David's got quite a bit of experience on that. And there's a lot of the saws are going to the non-adjustable, or they are adjustable, but not with a screwdriver, auto tunes. And then will be just any questions and things that you have on saw chain or saws. And we're going to be talking about some of our Zoom training workshops coming up, storm sawing workshops, the training and chainsaw consultation that we have available. I've got some things I'm still trying to clear out of the e-store. And so hopefully we're going to discuss some of those. I've got some links and things to that. And then also the Legacy Instructor Program. And I don't think Robert is dropping in tonight. We'll see here in a little bit. But he said he might. But he was working today. I think he's done hitting the bed. And but Chris Childs with God's Pit Crew, and he does some training with forced applications. And then David Breeden, Husqvarna, and he's North Georgia representative, and has been working. I guess are you going on 21 years? I think now, huh? 22.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm working on 21. I'm about halfway through 20, so I'm right in the middle of 20 and 21. So I guess you could look at it that way. If you ask guess if you ask a 9-year-old, how old they are, they'll tell you they're almost 10, right? So
Yeah,
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 it's almost 21 years.
yeah, yeah. Well, I sent you a couple pictures just to kind of perk your memory this week, and that you looked a lot younger back a few years ago.
Yeah, much different. You pointed out that I had hair, and I don't think there was any gray in it. I could still have some hair, but I decided to get rid of what I had, and of course, there's plenty of gray now, but
Yeah.
those are the gray is just a sign of experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When
I
when
understand
I
that.
uh when I take a saw that I have as a demo and I sell it to somebody, they want to know why I want so much for it. I said, this one's experienced. So when you sell an experienced saw, it should cost more. A new one out of the box should be cheaper.
I understand that for sure. It's something where the more time you put on it, the better it is. I think you have a Leroy, I believe it is, isn't it?
I have Leroy. He was born in 2011. I think like the 32nd week of 2011. So I know that because he's important to me.
As an aged saw.
Yeah.
Huh? Well, that's super cool. I'm gonna be checking some questions and things as we go through here. So if I'm looking around, that's what I'm kind of looking for is all the chat lines. But another thing, I've got a video, David, that put together, and it's on looking at this week's kind of head topic is auto tune chainsaws, and I've got a video that is actually for some of the dealer training that someone had sent to me, and more or less it's about 8 or 9 minutes, something like that, but it goes through quite an interesting process. Now I've sectioned it, took a lot out. It's about an hour and 10-15 minute training. Um, but I've got it set up so that you can take and be able to look and realize how the system works, and then also a really good graphic of how it works mechanically in the saw. So I've got that set up. I want to play it, and then we're going to do some discussion about that. See if anybody's got any questions and all about it. So I'm gonna play that, and we'll see how that goes. Can y'all hear that?
Not hearing anything yet.
Oh, sir.
All right. I know what the problem is. Here we go.
Let's talk a little bit about what AutoTune actually is. And so with AutoTune, it is a carburetor that has a microprocessor integrated into it, which governs and manages engine power through the ability to control fuel into the engine. The unique part about AutoTune is that not only is there a CPU board in the carburetor, or in the component, the module that's connected to the carburetor, but there is also a CPU board in the ignition module, and so you'll learn in a few minutes how they communicate with each other and help to get the maximum power and performance out of the engine as it's running. The nice thing about this is that it's constantly making adjustments so that as the operator, the end user is using this product, it is getting the maximum amount of power all the time. And so it's always running at its best condition that it can adjust for. Now, AutoTune has the ability to compensate for a lot of things. And so It will compensate for different fuel types, whether you're using ethanol fuel or non-ethanol fuel, whether you're using 87 octane or 95 octane, whether you're using normal pump fuel or canned synthetic fuel. It can adjust for altitude. And so depending on where some of you are located, you may have your store at 2,000 feet elevation, and your operators, your end users may be using the product at 6,000 feet of elevation. In that regard, AutoTune will adjust for those conditions, whereas in the past, you would have to go ahead and manually adjust your carburetor to get that saw to run correctly. AutoTune will have the ability to adjust for those conditions and allow the saw to run again at its maximum performance and output. And then, of course, temperature. So AutoTune has the ability to have a sensor in it that will allow it to adjust for temperature. And where this is really important is cold mornings for a start. This product will help for starting to be much quicker because it recognizes what the outside temperature is at the carburetor. And so it knows what that intake air temperature is coming into the engine, and it makes those adjustments immediately. Now, there is another way that AutoTune adjusts, and for us, it's a little bit on the negative side because if the saw has, let's say, an air leak, or if the saw were to have poor compression, AutoTune will adjust for that. Now, the poor compression thing, not so much a bad thing, but it will make those adjustments. But if you have an air leak, AutoTune will richen that mixture until it cannot correct anymore. So if you were operating a standard carbureted saw, that saw, you would hear it rev really high and you would say, oh, that's really weird, something's up. As a technician, you would notice it immediately. On an AutoTune saw, it's going to compensate for that, and it's going to make that adjustment. AutoTune will compensate for a dirty air filter. Now, if you had a dirty air filter in a standard carbureted saw, that saw would be hard to start. It may not start at all. If it did start, it would run poorly because airflow would not be good. The AutoTune technology has the ability to compensate for that dirty air filter for people that aren't good mechanically. So it's technology that, with the technology at hand, when you pull the starter rope, that activates the AutoTune module, and that AutoTune module goes to work immediately. There is a setup period that has to occur for the saw to adjust. And excuse me, we will show you what that actually looks like in a video later on how the chainsaw adjusts and how you tune it, basically, so that it is ready to go. I mentioned the ignition module and those types of things, and so what this technology has in it is what you see here. What it's looking for is a range between 8 and 12,000 RPMs. And what it's also looking for in most cases is what's referred to as wide open throttle. And so if you think about it, wide open throttle on most of these saws that have AutoTune is going to be somewhere between 13,500 RPMs to 13,800 RPMs. And that's without a load assigned to that saw. Now we apply a load, and so we're looking for that range to be between 8 and 12,000 RPMs. What the saw does at that point is it does what we refer to as a lean out test. And the saw will cut off fuel for a fraction of a second and see what the response of that engine is in that fraction of a second. So if we cut off the fuel and the RPMs drop, it senses that and says, hey, we need to make a fuel adjustment so that we're running at peak performance. Same thing happens on the opposite side. If we cut off the fuel and the RPMs increase, then we were running rich. And so now we can lean out the mixture. The AutoTune module will acknowledge that, and it will make that adjustment, and it will continuously do that as long as the conditions are in tuning mode. What AutoTune is doing is it's adjusting the condition of that saw to be just on the verge of that lean out seizure without going beyond where it needs to. So that's where you get the maximum amount of performance, the maximum amount of power, and the saw performs at its absolute peak right before that occurrence. So AutoTune is managing that all the time.
Have you ever imagined being able to constantly adjust your carburetor to achieve maximum power under all conditions, including altitude, temperature, and fuel changes? That's what AutoTune does for you. Let's take a closer look. The heart of the system is the AutoTune module that constantly monitors the engine and adjusts the fuel mixture to achieve optimal performance. Powered by the ignition module and using RPM input, AutoTune constantly changes the fuel metering to always achieve maximum power. Inside the AutoTune module is a computer-controlled valve that constantly changes its position to optimize the fuel mixture for the current operating condition. This slow motion animation showing how the valve works actually takes just 1/1000th of a second to move the valve to make a mixture change. AutoTune automatically adjusts fuel mixture for all operating conditions. This eliminates time-consuming manual adjustments and keeps the engine at peak performance. Shown here, with the saw running at 13,500 RPM, AutoTune leans the mixture for just 1/1000th of a second and monitors engine RPM response. Based on feedback from this lean-out test, AutoTune adjusts the fuel mixture to the engine, allowing it to always run at maximum power. While using the saw under load, AutoTune learns how to adjust the engine's RPM by safely enriching or leaning the mixture to meet the ever-changing demands the engine is exposed to. This presentation revealed the basic operating principles of the AutoTune fuel mixture control system. As with any system on an engine, there is no substitute for proper maintenance and care. Always consult your specific operator's manual for proper care tips and service operation intervals. The following training is designed for you to give more insight into theory, operation, and communication tools required to service this new technology. Remember, the more you know about how it works on the inside, the better you'll be able to service it on the outside.
All right, I think we're back here. Let's see what we have. And David, that video was some of the earlier, I believe, information that came out. There's been a couple other phases since then, I believe. So what would be your thoughts? Are those key parts that operators need to think about? I constantly get questioned about I haven't had it before. My saws have always been adjustable. I don't feel like I'm getting the right RPMs. I don't feel like I'm getting the right power, but it basically does everything for you as long as you keep filters maintained, fuel in there that's correct. I mean, it takes a lot of the guesswork away from it for climate changes, humidity, elevations, all that kind of stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, the technology is excellent. That AutoTune has gone through an evolution since that video. That video probably dates back to 2008 or so, maybe. If I think back, we're on the third version of AutoTune that's actually that we're using in production. So, but fundamentally, it hasn't changed. I mean, you've got a microprocessor on the carburetor that's reading information from the ignition module, and it's making carburetor adjustments or taking information 8 to 10 times per revolution. So, not under a load, at 13,800 RPMs, that's a lot of information very quickly. in the way that I see most chainsaws ran today professionally, which are and keep in mind most of the auto tune models are professional models. We still make a lot of saws that have adjustable carburetors still. Unfortunately, the federal government uh, makes you don't adjust them with carburetors anymore. Or with screwdrivers. There's a special tool that are limited. We even limit those to dealers. They can only buy 2 a year. Um, they'll tell you there's a $25,000 fine if you try to retail one of those to somebody, which I don't know of anybody that's ever been caught doing it or paying it. But so the saws, professional saws, most of those are being used by the tree care industry, and are being used by cities, counties, and states, so municipalities. That's where the bulk of the professional chainsaws are sold and used. And I feel like the technology is great because they don't have the ability to adjust carburetors. They don't have the time. They're in the production business, whether they're cleaning a tree up out of the road during a storm or they're on a residential tree care job. Uh, they're being paid to get a job done and get it done quickly. And this feature just increases the performance of the chainsaw. If there's anything, by talking to technicians, because it's been out there so long, people are resistant to change. It's just the way things are. You can't stop progress. But as I talk to highly qualified technicians and I ask them what they dislike about auto tune, it sometimes complicates the process of diagnosing issues, because sometimes, like he mentioned in that first slide, I mean, if the saw has an air leak, auto tune realizes that, and it's trying to make the saw run as rich as possible. So, technicians trying to figure out what that is, and on a traditional chainsaw, I mean, that's a catastrophic failure in some cases, unless the operator understands, like he said, the carburetor, the RPMs go up very high very quickly. If they are able to identify that, they may realize it and stop. But most people are just going to continue to run the saw, and that's going to cause a catastrophic failure. So nothing is 100% perfect, and I think the technology is great. I really like it, and I think it's made chainsaws better. I think it's made them, provide more performance to the end user.
Yeah, I think that anyone that's looking, see a lot of saw modifications and things like that. People are looking for peak power, peak RPM, those kinds of things, and the auto tune actually does that for you. I think that the issue is it makes it a little bit when people have bad time with it, is that if you had a screwdriver carburetor and you're running it and the filter gets dirty, it's going to start slowing down. It's going to get richer and richer. If you have a situation where you've got an air leak, you're gonna hear RPM go up. With the auto tune, it happens, and the same thing. In any of the non-adjustment carbs, as it starts to compensate for those things. If you've got a dirty filter, it just slowly takes and leans it out till you've got sometimes more or less overspeeding, or not overspeeding, it regulates that, but it does start lean seizure situation, high temperatures, detonation, those kinds of things. But it's as long as you keep the filter clean, an air leak and stuff, it compensates for. So that keeps you from having an issue of an overspeeding. The power just drops, and that's, I've noticed it working in higher altitudes, that it's a little bit tricky sometimes if you have a dirty air filter at all. So it's something where maintenance is key there to keep that power up and let that electronics do what it's supposed to do. And it's, it's not only regulating the fuel, it's regulating spark too. So it's changing your timing or intensity of spark to be able to take away those problems there. So I mean, it's always worked really good for me, but a lot of people have had issues with it. So, but I like it mentioned there. I think one big thing is that you you need to think about, if you understand how it works, then you can troubleshoot it. If you don't understand how it works, and oftentimes a lot of mechanics from my day, um, you end up with them thinking about, I don't understand how to do this. What's a car, truck, or chainsaw? I don't understand how to do it. It doesn't have points of condenser. It doesn't have screws on the side of it. So it's something that's out of my league. But with the proper equipment, and that's what the dealers have. It gives you the ability, if they understand how it works, you can be able to troubleshoot it really, really great. So, and I don't know what we have here in questions and answers, but we've got several that are watching here. We've got some on other topics there for sure. One of them, Chris, you might be familiar with. Brian Amador said, I have a question. There's like a little breather hole on the 461 gas tank. It leaks gas. Is there a cap for it or something? And I think what he's talking about is the tank vent. And this time of year is pretty tough on it, because the temperatures raising and lowering ends up building some pressures, and especially when you have cold weather gasolines that get into 70 and 80 and 90-degree temperatures, it builds a lot of tank pressure because of the Reed valve pressure. And that's how they regulate the PSI that fuel will, what the fuel will build itself in a container. And so what happens there is that it gets up higher than that tank vent can handle. And you have to have air coming into the vent to be able to get fuel out of it to the carburetor. So they try to set them up. And I don't know, Chris or David, if you know what that is. I used to think it was like 4 PSI or something like that was the bleed down pressure. I know that the inlet needle is somewhere around that, and I used to see issues to where the inlet needles would actually pop off their seat because of tank pressure, because the valve couldn't release it fast enough. And I've checked them over the years, back years ago, doing a lot of fuel tests of 20 to 25 psi that fuel would build in the tanks. And there's no inlet needle that's going to stay on the seat at that. So what happens is it starts running past it, and the fuel goes through the carburetor into the crankcase or leaks out. Same thing, that vent, they have to have a level on it. And so that vent takes and allows the pressure to come out to a certain level. Then after that, it's going to start forcing it past the inlet needle or coming out that vent system. So best thing you can do is really consider the fuel's volatility there in the pressure builds. And so maybe vent your tanks, vent your caps on your gas cans, that kind of stuff. Let some of that die down. And it usually only happens this time of the year, January to March, April, because that's when you have the winter gases coming out of the pumps, and they start moving them south as quick as they can. But like this year, it's cold one week, it's hot one week, it's cold the next week. And that's what's happening, is building pressure in that. We've got a bunch of people checked in on Instagram. I don't see any other questions on that. I have some questions on YouTube. One of them was David. I don't know if he's tried to check in or not, but evidently not. But he said he posted the other day. He saw that there's no reason to cut a notch on a tree like that. Just bore cut, leave out an inch of sapwood and bark for hinge. And I think he's talking about somebody commented on Chris's leaner video last week, and a lot of people think that with leaners there's not a need for having a face notch, but what happens on that, Chris? I think you mentioned it in the video. What happens on that when you don't have a face notch on a leaning tree or any tree that's moving faster than you can remove the back cut to the hinge?
You talking about a barber chair?
Well, if the face notch closes, or if you take the tree without a face notch, you start in the tree from the back, what's gonna start to happen? It's gonna start to split, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you just want the tree to fall and hit the ground, it will work. But with my face notch, I have control. I can aim the tree. I know where the tree is going to go. That's my big thing. I want to have as much control of that tree as I can possibly have.
And we had Warren Causey check in. Any comments on that? A lot of people think about small diameters and larger diameters, but it's something to where you start to think about a small tree will pop you in the face just about as big as a big one will split and come at you.
I don't want to get hit by any.
Yeah, I think Chris, really nailed it. I think with that face notch, it's all about control, and you really sacrifice that when you don't implement, using a face notch. Like you said, you probably get it on the ground, but also envision in that situation you have a lot of fiber pool as well, even below the root crown into the ground as well. If you don't use a face notch and just kind of bore in and leave the sapwood and the bark to maintain your control. I think split's going to happen whether it's vertical or both vertical, but upward versus downward. I think you're going to have fiber pull either way. I just don't think that's a great situation to be in.
David, your thoughts?
I mean, they hit it dead on the head. I mean, I want to, if you don't use a notch and you take a heavy leaner like that, you creating a scenario of chaos. And I don't want chaos when I'm felling tree. I want to have control. I promise you that person's going to be cutting a little bit and running if they've got any knowledge at all about what's about to happen. And that's just not a good situation. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do things, and there's a lot of techniques. Not all of them are smart. Not all of them are right. So.
Yeah, I think the important thing there is understanding the plan, and I think a lot of people that I've seen over the years try to pick up production by doing things quickly, and then all of a sudden you have a stuck saw, or you have a situation that the tree doesn't go exactly right, or something safety wise happens to the operator. So it's important that they have a plan and understand what that possibility is. Question, David, came is that from I think this one's from David Johnson. No, it's 902 hand. So how would the saw owner know if an auto-tune saw has an air leak before it's too late?
It would be, if you think about the carburetor functions that uh, that that you associate with running too rich. So uh, it might not achieve the maximum RPMs, or it may stumble on acceleration. Um, so if you go back to the training that we do, if you got high speed, the flutter, and then it idles without the chain turning, and it idles in all positions, and it accelerates without hesitation, then those are those are the carburetor functions that you want in a saw that's properly performing. So you could maybe be missing out on some of those, and know that you've got evidence of an air leak, and that it's not always going to be that. One of the things that I failed to mention when I started talking earlier was, as auto tunes evolve, so has the methods to reset it back to its factory setting. um, the first versions that I saw, you needed a 9-volt battery to do that. It was kind of interesting. It was kind of an afterthought, but and then the second and third versions took a good while to do. But now, I mean, when I set my saw back to, or when I calibrate it by putting it under load, within 60 seconds, I can hear the auto tune adjusting the high speed and low speed. And you can hear it. It doesn't require a lot of training. And in our video that we made, I mean, we demonstrated that. So any rich feature, to answer the question, would be maybe an indication of that. But that could be other things. That could be dirty air filter. So you still, it's still two-stroke theory. You have to diagnose what the issue could be. Had a great conversation yesterday with the technician about an air leak. Sometimes air leaks get created by the chainsaw operator. If I know nobody on here has ever done it, but occasionally you'll see somebody get pinched, right? I mean, even the great Tim R has been pinched before.
Yeah.
And so, you get the bar, pinched in a log, and the natural reaction is to start jerking on it before your buddy sees that you got pinched. And you got a chain loop that runs around the nose of the bar, and on the other end of that loop goes around the sprocket, which is attached to the end of the crankshaft. And so when you start jerking on that saw very hard, if you think about where the force is going as that tip of the chain is being pulled, pressure is going on the other end, and you got a crankshaft that runs directly through the center of the saw from the clutch all the way over to the flywheel, and that's putting a lot of pressure on that. And you don't think about what kind of damage you're doing, and you may not see that for several weeks as the leak gets larger and larger. So, there's things to, if you get pinched, there's ways to get it out. Don't just, snatch on the saw, because you could fracture a crankshaft that breaks. I mean, you don't see that a lot anymore. I mean, if you look at the internals of these chainsaws, there's substantial parts there, and it's high quality, and but damage gets done. Things don't just break on their own.
Yeah, there's a lot of times that we don't recognize it. I remember years ago I was after Hurricane Hugo in South Carolina, and I was doing some work with warehouse Westvaco, and I was going out to some dealers in the area, and one of them mentioned about, you think there's something wrong here? I've got like 4 of these saws in, and they've got broken crankshafts. And I said, well, let me go get something. I went out to the car and I came back with a wedge. I said, how many of these you sell? And they said, well, we don't sell many of those. I said, well, how are people getting out of stuck situations? And so they're jerking on the saw. And many times what I would see in stuff coming in warranty and all would be, you could look at the crankshaft end that broke, and it would be smooth on one side of that fracture and broken like, quick on the other side. And what that is it cracked because somebody got stuck and pulled too hard, and then basically it kept going until it came off. So it might be I pinched this thing last Thursday and I'm cutting tomorrow, and all of a sudden the crankshaft breaks. And you don't realize that, if you don't understand what causes it. And in many cases, the manufacturers have bulletproofed some of that stuff because they've changed bearings, or they've changed crankcase designs, those kinds of things, crankshaft designs, to be able to work better with it. But that's stuff that it happens. It can be abused, and sometimes the operator doesn't know it. And that's like, I think too, with the auto tune, is you're going to notice a power drop. Like you was talking about, is how do you know that? Well, there's going to be a power drop. You're going to start to see the RPM changing. It may not idle as well. Those kinds of things. Something's got to be causing the issue. It could be a part. It could be an air leak. It might be a dirty air filter that needs to be maintained. It could also be fuel ratios. When you start to look at those vapor pressures we talked about a few minutes ago and stuff too, that affects what that little machine is trying to compensate for. So it's kind of goes hand in hand, and understanding that, that's how you would know if there's an air leak or something too late, is you're going to start to see some power drop. And the same thing will happen with a carburetor that's adjustable.
And
Let's
and
see.
one
Go ahead.
one important point that was made in that video you showed, he said that when it detects an air leak, it will richen the saw until it can no longer do it anymore. So when it goes outside of the parameters, the saw may still run, and then you lose that ability and you get possibly overspeeding. I mean, I see auto tune saws that have, lean seizures. I mean, it's not 100% of the time, but many times it'll save it if the operator is astute enough to understand that my saw's not running properly. If they just continue to run it, things could happen.
Mm-hmm. And like if you had one with an air leak, remember he said that it was like between 8,000 and 13,500 or something like that, the RPM. Is that
Yeah,
what it was? 12,000 to 13,500 or
well,
something like that?
he said under load 8 to 12, but
Yeah.
13.5 to 13.8, out of, not under load.
All right,
Out
so
of
let's say one other issue is, let's go to an aggressive chain. Let's say we really want this thing to cut. We're cutting softer woods and we want it to really cut. So we take the depth gauges down and we load that engine up, and then we have an air leak. What's going to happen? It's gonna start to try to lean it out even more, isn't it? Because it's trying to bring the RPM back up. So combination of stuff like that. And those kind of things happen with adjustable carburetors and elevation too. So it's all that the operator needs to understand how it works. I've always been one, if I understand how it works, I can usually keep it working. If I don't understand how it works, then I get frustrated with it and somebody else is at fault, And that's true. Sometimes it is a bad situation. Sometimes it is a bad part or a bad saw or whatever. But in a lot of cases, it's something that caused that to happen. And a lot of people don't realize. I traveled the country for years. People don't realize that if a saw model starts to show up, if you had problems with it, and somebody says we haven't had any problem with it, it's probably something kind of individual, because when you have something like a part issue or a carburetor issue or ignition module issue or that kind of stuff, it shows up in batches. And
Right.
also regionally to some case too, cold to hot weather, dry conditions, all that kind of stuff. All of that shows up. And so it's important to think about the troubleshooting process, understanding what those basics are. David said that makes sense. Well, that's good. So we got a good answer to that.
Awesome.
Let's see. Another one, David Vossler said, do you need to change the fuel filter?
Of course. It's part of, your standard maintenance, regardless of what brand you have. Um, look in the owner's manual and look at the service intervals. But, definitely, make sure that I check my fuel filter, every several months. It's easy to reach in there and grab it when you're changing, when you're filling up to see if your filter's dirty. The filters that are used by the major brands are excellent quality. So I would say, I don't know. I'm ashamed to say I can't tell you what the owner's manual would say, but I'm going to assume it's going to say once a year. I think if you did that once a year, I think you would be, would be good. I mean, it's not as frequent as you need to change your air filter. That's probably the most important thing that you can do to maintain the performance of your chainsaw. That and the fuel you run.
So air filters don't last the life of the saw?
Air filters, unfortunately, don't. I mean, think technology like auto tune makes, you know, maintenance less frequent, unfortunately. And that, that if you tapped out your air filter daily, that's not too much. There's a lot of air that passes through there, and talk about running 13,800 RPMs. That's a lot of air that's passing through that filter. And if it's the nose of the chainsaw, if I had a stuffy nose and somebody asked me to run a marathon, it would be very difficult for me to do that because I wouldn't be able to breathe. And so you have to keep your chainsaw's nose clean.
I know in the RDT system, like with some of the mills and things where they had crews, I used to suggest to replace the filters. We just, checking filters and that kind of thing. Fuel filters were about 120 hours. I think from a homeowner or firewood or most production situations, at least once a season, every year starting the season in the fall, if it's a firewood saw, but if it's a full-time user, looking at about that 120 hours, which 120 hours is a long time actually. So and you might be able to go longer than that. It's according to what your application is, what type of wood you're cutting, how dusty it is, how you store it, all that kinds of stuff goes along with it. So, Chris, what do you use as far as the volunteer saws? What how often do you change, or do you change the filters and fuel filters?
Yeah, we change the fuel filters probably twice a year, and then we tap the air filters out every day. And then they just go by the owner's manual on when to change the air filters. We run in the tool trailer. I got 40 saws, 15 of which are the auto tunes. I'm going towards all the auto tunes just as saws wear out. Everything we run is professional grade, but I love them. I haven't had any issues.
Warren, are you using auto tunes?
We're using the M-Tronics on some of our saws from Steel. And we also use all professional grade 261s, 500i, 462, that sort of thing. Some of our like introductory training saws we'll use, like the 271, the Farm Boss, that sort of thing to kind of get people introduced. But all of our stuff in the fields, the professional, and we're kind of like Chris, we're about half and half right now on the M-Tronic versus just traditional tune, so we're migrating, as things progress, but it's about where we are.
Yeah, I've had really good success with them. I think they start much easier as long as you maintain them, they start easier. They work good in elevations, up and down, going across areas. I mean, it's just it's just a much simpler system than having to recheck and do. Plus, it made it easier in a lot of my training. I didn't have to do hands-on carburetor adjustments. So it made for opening up a few more minutes for brakes anyway. But yeah, it's something that if you understand it, you can make it happen. Let's
I
see.
think
David Justin said, "Go ahead."
one more thing, you know, to me, when I saw, the data that you can pull from auto tune, probably the most important thing for me, from a perspective of talking to end users, because, you take a certain, end user who has starter problems in everything that he has. Doesn't matter if it's a trimmer or a chainsaw, a blower. He's always breaking the starter ropes, and through training that most of that has everything to do with his starting methods and poor starting methods. But when you look at auto tune data and it tells you how many times a chainsaw has been started, that's not how many times that rope's been pulled. I've seen some saws that have had that's got 4,000 starts. So when I start looking at that, and my 562 is one of those, and up until at 4,000 starts, it had the original starter rope, and it blows me away that you can build a starter housing that lasts that long, and some components of that housing were starting to break down, but the rope was good. And when I show that to an end user, it blows their mind. Like, how many times have you pulled this rope through? It's amazing that this stuff can last this long, because the time is not, to me, the hours on the saw, because most people think, oh, I put thousands of hours. It's not happening. Um, a lot of times they spend more time idling than they do at wide open throttle, and it gives you all that data. But the amount of starts, that's eye opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think the video talked about it. It starts that process of working the auto tune when you pull the rope. So in other words, it starts using that electrical charge to start that system. And I don't know how many times my saws get pulled. I mean, when you start thinking about it, you got 12 people and just doing a presentation to start with, I probably start at least 10, 12 times. And then you got probably 3 starts a piece for each one of the people. I mean, and then you go and you've got that saw for 3, 4 years. There's a lot of starts. I had to replace, I think, 2 ropes. And a lot of that was because the handle gave up. Is It wasn't the rope broke, the handle gave up. And so that's something it is amazing. But people have trouble with starters all the time because of,
Yes.
and it's something to where they don't understand how it works there. And so it's something that it's just some understanding. So David Vossa wrote too. What do you think about foam air filters that are oiled on pro saws? And I'll give my 2 cents on that to start with, and then something which I'll say. I think they do a great job. I think most of them have gotten away from some of the pre-oiling uh, on it. When we started off with K&N was working with us on saws that were out west of Mount St. Helens dust, those types of things years ago, and we oiled all of those to make sure and capture all of that fine particles. And the steel filters today and stuff are still used. Husqvarna filters are using the same process now too. And then you've got the pre-filters at the flywheel that takes away a lot of it, but a lot of smaller dust still goes up through. One of the biggest issues that I see with foam air filters is people don't keep them out of moisture. You can't run a 2-cycle engine with a moist air filter. because it pulls the water particles in through the filter, and it'll take out your intake side of the piston pretty doggone fast. I mean, when I say doggone fast, you over a period of a firewood season, you're going to end up with a scored cylinder and piston. If you're out there working and you're keeping it in the back of the truck in the rain and those kinds of things, and you don't dry that filter out before you start with it, you're going to end up with cylinder and piston problems. And sometimes if you don't use it regularly enough, you're going to end up with crankshaft bearing problems also, because they're going to rust up. So foam air filters, that's my thoughts. I love them. I think they do a great job of filtering, but it's something that a lot of times the modified systems, you got to make sure you keep them dry. Let's see here. Anything else? Any comments on that? I don't see anything else. Let's see. I saw one David Johnson had wrote. He said that was a great explanation talking about the auto tune. He said, I've been using a 550 XP for a few years and liked it. So we bought a 572 XP. I have always been careful not to make my sauce too lean, so I tend to run detuned. What happens on detuning, David?
Well, you're gonna generate a lot of heat. Saw that runs the coolest is, wide open throttle. So, with the proper fuel and air mixture. So if you got, more fuel than air and, detuned saw, you're going to create a bunch of heat.
Yeah, it doesn't burn very clean. And a lot of times people don't realize that the more oil in the mix also raises the temperature, and it's an air-cooled engine. So when it's good to let it idle there for a few minutes to warm up. Maybe when I say a few minutes, it doesn't take a couple minutes really, unless it's really, really, really cold. But then on the other end, I see a lot of people after you start to shut it down, you let it idle. People are saying, well, that needs to be done for the auto tunes and stuff like that. But temperatures don't go down when you do that. The temperatures go down when you got air passing past the cylinder fins and the flywheel. But there's different situations. But it's according to, again, going back to how you load it as an operator, or how aggressive your chain is, all that kind of stuff, which causes it. It's kind of like a diesel. When you start up the hill, does the temperature go down or go up? I bet Chris can answer that one.
Goes up.
So it's the same thing when you start looking at a string trimmer with long line or a chainsaw with aggressive chain. So it starts to add up there pretty fast. So I have a little bit here. I wanted to do go through some stuff here. What did I do? I lost my. Let me get this put back over there. I want to go down through a little bit of what we've got cooking here. I've got Zoom training workshop coming up for basic chainsaw operation. It might be for disaster groups, preliminary. It might be for new hires. I've got one of the power companies in Alabama is looking at utilizing the Zoom training for their initial days of employee hires. I've got quite a lot of church groups, firewood cutters, so that are looking to get some basics down, and then people like Chris and Dave David, they would be taking on the hands-on portions of it in the field. But it's just a good 2 hour session that we're going to be doing, and that'll be January the 16th at 7 to 9 p.m. And I've got enough people to actually say that the $25 per seat charge is pretty reasonable, I think. So we're gonna have that session on January the 16th at 7 p.m. I've got all the presentation put together, be working here on the tool bench with sharpening and those kinds of things. So I think it'd be a good session for you for users that are new as well as experienced. So might pick up something. Storm sawing workshop. We're going to be doing it this time. It's going to be April the 2nd through the 4th in Kingston, Georgia. And that's right outside of Rome, Georgia, about an hour north of Atlanta, about an hour south of Chattanooga, just off of 75. And we've got a nice cutting site over there at the Breeden Hacienda. I used to call it a state, but you never know. It's something that we're going to be able to take down some trees. That's a 3-day program that works with all the aspects of the day one that we kind of will be doing on the Zoom workshops. And then we'll be doing it live there. We'll be doing day 2 felling and then bucking and limbing for storm on the 3rd day. And then I do have chainsaw training and consultation. I've got some different risk management groups and those kinds of things that are asking about by the hour chainsaw consultation. And it's kind of what David does, traveling around to dealerships and things like that, is consulting on different issues. And so if I will help to research it if I don't know, and we can maybe get you some answers to work with your people and formulate training that's needed to work farther with that. We've got also the legacy program, which that's going to start up on January 23rd. Registration for that ends on January 10th. I've already got about 6 that are signed up for that, and we probably will have no more than 10 to 12. And so we'll be talking about what it is to be involved in transferring the knowledge for chainsaw operations. So it's a train the trainer course from the standpoint of you should have skills already as far as chainsaws go, but it's going to be looking at how do we put together a program, what should be covered, and then also getting into maybe you're managing a crew. You have your own business. You're managing a crew and employees. Maybe you're the instructor for a work group of some business, or maybe you want to start your own training business. So, or be involved with forced applications. So it's something that we'll be talking about. It's 12 weeks on that, and it's 12 Tuesday nights. We'll be working from about 7:30 to 9, about an hour and a half session each night. And so that's the legacy instructor program. And I think we had about 8 went through it for 2023. So, and they all had good comments back. So registrations are coming in on that. I've got still some items from our move. We downsized quite a lot in August and September, and I've got still some things left as far as our e-store clearance items. You can also go to our e-store to register for the legacy instructor, for the Zoom workshops, and also the storm sawing workshop. All of that is on there. And if you have questions, you can also email me at info@forestapps.com. The e-store clearing items, I've got chisel bit files for square filing. If you wanted to try that, I've got some, they're all new, but it's all leftover stuff that I've had from training and things like that. And so those files are, I've got triangular, I've got double bevel, I've even got, I think, some single bevels left, and then also some different round files. Some filing devices, FERD, CSX tool, which is like the steel 2-in-1 tools, and then also the Sharp Force or chain sharps. So those are available. I've got some low prices on those, just trying to get them out. And also some t-shirts and some caps, and I've got our ebook, and also sensible wood cutting videos that are really good for beginning groups. And so those are DVDs that you can get to play. And also all of those things are stuff that I've used in training over the years, and I just accumulated this stuff, and we need to get it out of my way here. So I've got some good prices and things on it. And if you look here, we started some QR codes. You can be able to take your cell phone and shoot this QR code. That'll take you to the e-store. And also we've got forcedapps.com that you can use the QR codes on. And so that'll take you right to our website, and all the information is listed there. So those kind of things are available. So that's kind of a lot of the things here for tonight. And any other questions that you have, if you will send them to me at info@forestapps.com. I'll go down through the chat sessions to make sure that I didn't miss anything. But if you've got questions, info@forestapps.com is a way to send them to me, or go to the website and enter from there. So all of those things are available for you. And so we hope that you're picking up some things from these Thursday night sessions and be able to utilize them. And so there's a lot of good questions tonight. Any of you guys have any other comments? What's happening out there in the field? Is some of the storm work cleaning up? Is it still a lot to do?
Not so much in Clarksville. I think between all the different organizations, we got all the tree work done. They're doing some demos now. A couple hundred houses were destroyed. So,
Wow.
but we're all back resting and ready for the next one.
Okay. And I think you got some training coming up. You're headed to Mississippi.
Yeah, I'll be leaving for Mississippi on Monday. Got training down there in Hattiesburg, and then the following week I'm in Georgia, South Georgia, one for a company down there.
All right, all right. And David, you got things going on in around Georgia, and got South Carolina a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I was in Myrtle Beach right before Christmas, and going got something at the end of the month that pours into the 1st of February down in South Georgia, several places. So looking forward to that. Hopefully it won't be too cold.
I don't know. Looks like we're about to get some winter stuff here before long, I think.
It's gonna get wet.
It happens this year. I don't miss that part.
It's
not as much working in it as it is getting to it.
Yeah, right.
That's the hard part. But and Warren, you got anything on your schedule?
Yeah, we're towards the end of the month. We kind of got our first little training and outreach situation. It's so last July there was a microburst in the north part of my county, Cherokee County, Georgia, and we helped out a family there that owns another ministry that utilizes horses to kind of outreach to young adults and stuff like that. And they had a lot of blowdown, a lot of topped pines and all that sort of stuff. So they got some stuff left over. It's kind of perfect, honestly, to kind of get the rust off after winter, after the Clarksville tornado, and kind of reintegrate with the team, and also be able to do some local outreach at the same time. So that's coming up the end of this month, and then yeah, we got some stuff in February too.
You got a legacy program you're entered into, so
that's right. Yeah,
right.
Excited about that. It's gonna be awesome.
All right. Well, that's great, guys. I appreciate all your help, and we're going to do it again, hopefully next Thursday. So if you are able to drop back by, we'll have another topic going on. had a lot of questions over the past week on the videos that we posted, and so I'll be picking out different things and discussing some of those. And if you have, like I say, any questions that we need to topically discuss, let me know, and we'll do that too. So, but that's the week. We appreciate you, and you guys be careful out there. And I want to tell everybody good sawing to you.
See.
See you.